I hope you notice we got the state fair setting up over here. That's what I should be spending my time doing for the people of this state right now, but here we are to talk about something else. And that is the issue of this bill that has recently been released. I got a copy of it Friday night for the first time that would implement medical marijuana in the state of Mississippi. Now, I've made no secret of the fact that this agency is not designed nor equipped, nor is this agency funded to support such an expansive and expensive program as this proposes to be. I want to pick up for you a copy of my oath of office. I took this oath on April the 2nd, 2018, and I'm going to read it to you. And it may not mean anything to anybody else in Mississippi, but it means something to me, and it hangs on my wall every day. I, J. Andrew Gipson, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Mississippi and obey the laws thereof, and that I am not disqualified from holding this office. I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter, so help me God. That was the oath that I took to the people of Mississippi. And I'm not here today as another agency head appointed by anybody. I'm here today as the duly elected Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce of the state of Mississippi. And I represent the same people that everybody in the legislature represents. We represent the same citizens, and we owe it to the people of Mississippi not to just slap this thing together and run it out in the darkness of night, but to do it right and get it right. There are three questions that the people of Mississippi deserve answers to. This 144-page bill certainly is not what the voters voted for in Initiative 65. Certainly that 9-page constitutional amendment was much more streamlined. It was all under the Department of Health. There were limited taxes that were designed to pay for the program. And this proposal that has run out here by the legislature is not what the people voted for. Whether you're for it or whether you're against it, it's not what the people voted for. I think there are many reasons in this bill for conservative people across Mississippi to have great, deep concerns. I have those concerns. I'm going to talk about those concerns today. There are also lots of reasons for the 74, the initiative supporters, to be deeply concerned about what they'll find buried in the 144 pages of this proposed bill. The three questions that the people of Mississippi deserve an answer to are these. Number one, who is going to operate this expansive program? Number two, who is going to pay for it? And number three, and importantly, we all need to know, how much is it going to cost? The taxpayers of the state of Mississippi deserve answers on all those things. And standing here today, I don't think anybody can really answer those questions. Now, we all know there were problems with Initiative 65. I know about the problems, you do too. Even the supporters admitted there were problems. But there are just as many problems in other areas of this bill as there were with that initiative. And part of the reason why this whole press conference could have been avoided is that this bill was drafted behind closed doors, outside the committee process, secretly, 3 or 4 legislators putting it together without the opportunity for the people of Mississippi to have any input on it. That's not the way things are supposed to work in the legislature. You know, they had one committee hearing on this in the Senate. I didn't even get notified or invited to it. This agency was not even asked for input on this legislation. We were told, you're going to be in it, get your forms ready, and by the way, tell us what you think it's going to cost, without even seeing the bill. That's not the way legislation is supposed to be drafted. The Constitution provides for a committee process, hearings, discussion, and amendments. And this proposal has some serious issues. Number one, it looks nothing like Initiative 65. So that's something I want people to understand. Number two, The voters who passed Initiative 65 expressly chose to put the whole program under the Mississippi Department of Health. That answers question number one. Who's going to operate it? Well, the voters said it's the Department of Health. And that makes sense because almost all of the 36 states who have a medical marijuana program in America, almost all of them have it under the Department of Health or an independent commission chaired by and operated by the Department of Health. Why? Because it's a medical issue. It's a drug issue. It's a prescription issue. It's a patient issue. And we don't do those things at the Department of Agriculture and Commerce. We don't have a drug program. We don't inspect crops. All the crops we have in Mississippi are legal crops. We don't go to processing facilities because those are legal processing facilities. We don't isolate and review transportation and destruction. So the first question is, who's going to operate it? This bill is different from what the voters passed because it puts not one agency over it, but three. It has the Department of Health, a limited role. The Department of Agriculture and Commerce, they have put in there to license and oversee cultivation of marijuana, processing of marijuana, transportation of marijuana, and destruction of marijuana. And I want the people of Mississippi to know we don't do any of those things at the Department of Agriculture. It's going to cost a lot of money. We don't have the staff. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the vehicles. We don't have the surveillance technology to do these things. And somebody is going to have to pay for it. Which brings me to the second question. Who's going to pay for this? Now, I was asked about 2 months ago for a potential budget on cultivation and processing. I sent people to Arkansas. I sent people to Louisiana. I sent people over this country, and I've talked to all the states around here that have a program, and we estimate for cultivation and processing the cost to be about $2.9 million. Who's going to pay for that? The way Initiative 65 was passed, the way the voters of Mississippi authorized it, the industry was supposed to pay for this. I believe the constitutional amendment had $2.5 million being fronted to get the program started. And then after that, the fees and the licensing fees, et cetera, were supposed to pay for this program, not by the people of Mississippi, but by the marijuana industry, the cannabis industry. They said it won't cost the people of Mississippi anything. It'll pay for itself. I want you to understand, the way this bill is drafted, every fee paid, every tax collected, excise tax, sales tax, licensing fees, all of it under the express language of this bill is sucked up and going to the state general fund, not to fund enforcement of this legislation. Who's going to pay for it? I've got some recent experience on this. The legislature is notorious for passing new programs, massive government bureaucracies, and never funding enforcement of it. In 2020, I hold a copy of Senate Bill 2725, the Mississippi Hemp Cultivation Act, passed and went into law in last year, 2020, and it established under the legal farm bill system, industrial hemp could be grown under this act, and a state could come up with a plan to regulate it, and that's what they passed. We were told that they wanted to have a state plan under the Department of Agriculture and Commerce. We were told they would fund it. We requested a very modest amount of funding, $500,000 to get it up and going last year, and again included it in our budget request this year. And would it surprise you to know the legislature has not appropriated one single copper penny to enforce the Mississippi Hemp Cultivation Act, and I don't expect that they ever will. That's why this program, which is far more expensive, has got to be paid for by somebody, and we need to find out who's going to pay for it. I believe the industry ought to pay for this, not the taxpayers of Mississippi. And finally, thirdly, how much is it going to cost? Well, I've told you the portion that we estimated for processing and cultivation, about $2.9 million. Do you realize that if that's all we did at the Department of Agriculture, that would be a 41% increase in the budget of this little agency? 41%. Now they've added to it transportation and destruction. Who's going to pay for that? We're still putting a pencil to it to find out how much that's going to cost. We don't know. That doesn't include the part of the Department of Health, what it's going to cost them. It doesn't include the Department of Revenue, what it's going to cost them. But I'm telling you, this legislation has some issues that need to be addressed. All three of those things were addressed in Initiative 65. They're not addressed in this proposed draft legislation. I want to say this. As far as the proposal pending now is concerned, MDAC would be responsible for licensing and oversight of medical marijuana cultivation facilities, processing facilities, entities that transport medical marijuana, I guess truckers, and entities that dispose or destroy medical marijuana. And we don't do any of those things today. And to add insult to injury, they say you've got to do it all by 60 days after the bill is passed, which they say will be effective immediately. Now that's impossible. That is impractical. And again, we don't know how to pay for it. It's unworkable. I want to suggest to you there are ways to improve this bill. I served in the legislature for many years. And I know that with an open and transparent process and open communication and openness to new ideas, there's a way to make this bill much better. I've offered to attend any committee meeting that may be held in the future about this. I'd be happy to come bring our concerns. But the bottom line is this: there are ways to make it better, but having the Department of Agriculture and Commerce oversee this massive, expansive government bureaucracy is going to cost the taxpayers of Mississippi a whole lot of money. The industry ought to be the one to pay for it. And in my view, the Department of Health is the right agency to administer this drug and medical issue, because this is going to grow the government of the state of Mississippi in an exorbitant way, creating a massive bureaucracy. And frankly, unless the legislature dedicates some funding through the fees to pay for this program, I don't know how it's going to be enforced. I've got our Ag Theft Director here today, Chief Dean Bernard. He's the chief of our only law enforcement division, the Mississippi Agriculture Livestock Theft Bureau. We've got 8 or 9 investigators that work the whole state, chasing after stolen cows, recovering tractors, helping farmers when their grain bins get raided or when their pivots get stolen. We've got a lot to do to keep us busy, and we have limited manpower to do it. This bill will greatly expand the size of government. It'll greatly expand the size of this agency. And as a conservative, we're not supposed to be for that. So I'm really pleased to report that the good news is I am in discussions with legislative leadership over the weekend, have been all weekend, am today. Look forward to meeting with them, to hammering out the details of this, finding a way to make it a better bill, finding a way to make it more like what the people of Mississippi said they wanted to do. A program under the Department of Health, a program that pays for itself through the industry making the payments, not the taxpayers of Mississippi, and a program that is not unmanageable because of its exorbitant costs. You'll find more efficiencies putting these responsibilities under the Department of Health and dedicating the industry stream of revenue to paying for it. And that's what we're supposed to be about. So thank you for coming today. I'm fixing to get over here and help put the livestock shows together and get some panels put up and get ready to welcome the children of Mississippi here for the great Mississippi State Fair. But I'll be glad to take a few questions from the press right now. Jeff, yes.
I believe you said before that given no change in this, you would consider litigation against this. You still considering that if this moves forward?
You know, I've got a lot of options, and I didn't say I would consider litigation on the radio that day. I said I would. He asked me a question, would I consider legal action? And the answer, of course, is yes. We have to consider all of our options. This is not what the people wanted. It's not what my oath of office requires. And it's not what the people of Mississippi elected me to do, to be the marijuana kingpin of the state of Mississippi. That's just not what we do at the Department of Agriculture. But I'll consider all those options, and if it goes forward unchanged, we'll be calling one more press conference to tell all y'all what we're gonna do. Yes, Courtney Ann.
Commissioner, in one of the letters that you had sent to lawmakers, I noticed that you had referenced the fact that it's still a Schedule I drug. Is that still at the crux of the concern here, and can you speak to that a little bit more?
Absolutely. It is still marijuana under federal law, and I referenced all the code sections in my Attorney General's request. All of the marijuana, all parts of it, from seed to leaves to plants, anything, is illegal. It's a controlled substance under Schedule I of the United States Controlled Substances Act. It's illegal to be imported into Mississippi, to be transported in Mississippi, or any other state in this nation. So there's a major federal issue there that nobody has yet been able to answer. And I've talked to other states who are dealing with this, and they're dealing with the same issue. This stuff appears and nobody knows where it came from. How did it get in Mississippi in the first place? It can't get here without breaking federal law. That's a major concern, and a major reason why I've asked just to be left out of this.
Do you believe that other states that have Department of Agriculture involved in some kind of way are violating that law then?
Well, only one state has the Department of Agriculture doing it, and that's, I believe, the state of Florida. In Louisiana, they started out to do that, but then they put in the law to limit it to universities, so the Ag Department really didn't have a role there. So if Mississippi passes this bill the way it is, we'd be an outlier state. We don't have to reinvent this wheel. 33 other states have gotten it right. They've put it under the Health Department. They've put an independent commission chaired by the Health Department. And this is heading down a path that would put Mississippi as the exception and not the rule in this program. It's a drug issue. It's a health issue, not an agriculture issue. Yes.
Mr. Gipson, assuming that the legislator was able to budget the percent increase that you mentioned earlier for covering this program, and this were to go into law, would the agency be prepared to take on that extra workload?
Well, not under the time frame they proposed. They said we got to start issuing licenses in 60 days after it passes. Well, I don't know when they're going to have a special session, but 60 days, I mean, we've got to, if this passed the way it is today, we'd have to put out notices and hire a bunch of people to staff it. We'd have to buy software and computers and equipment and drones, surveillance equipment that we don't have today. And I don't know how we can do that in 60 days without just looking the other way, and I'm not going to look the other way. Another fascinating concept in this bill is there's no real role for law enforcement. Where is the Department of Public Safety in this bill? Where is the Bureau of Narcotics? Why is the law enforcement of Mississippi left out of this conversation? I've got my theories, but it's a good question. But that's not why I'm here today. But it is interesting that law enforcement has really no role in this proposal. Yeah, Jeff, oh, I'm sorry, before you, because you're this lady right here, yes. You go, yeah.
Okay, sorry. You said you would offer advice and improvements on this bill. What are the most important improvements in your opinion?
I think the biggest improvement we can make on this bill is because it is a drug and a medical issue, it needs to be under the Department of Health. And I'll go further and say the Department of Health needs to be guaranteed a dedicated stream of revenue, whether it's through the fees or taxes or whatever, to pay for this program. Because we're living in times when the legislature's flush with cash. I served in the legislature when we were broke, when we were having to dip down in the rainy day fund. And that day is going to come again. Economic cycles happen. And when times get hard and the legislature's having to make big decisions, guess what? I don't think regulating a medical marijuana program is going to be at the top of the list. You're going to be looking at roads and education and health care and so forth. So I'm concerned that without a dedicated stream of revenue to fund this, the taxpayers of the state of Mississippi, me and you, and everybody who's watching out there, we're going to pick up the tab for this expansive program, and nobody knows what it's going to cost. I hope that the Legislative Budget Office will really crunch the numbers on this and look at how much this is going to cost, and also how much revenue is it going to really generate. How many patients are there going to be who need this product? How much grow area, I think they call it canopy, is going to be needed? And how much revenue is that going to generate? Will this program pay for itself? I think that's a fair question. And as a conservative, I think we all need the answer. Jeff, yeah.
Commissioner, legislators have said that they put some clauses in the bill that would allow you to, as someone put it, farm out responsibilities.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, yeah.
Sure. I mean, is that an option? Is that a possibility or something you would consider?
Well, if it passes the way it is, we'll have to consider farming it out. I don't know, you know, there are other agencies who do this work, but my question is, if they're putting it in the bill that we could farm it out, why not put in the Department of Health and let them farm it out? You achieve the same result with more efficiencies. We're gonna have 3 state agencies staffing up to do this when you could have it under one and save the taxpayers enormous amounts of fund and mitigate the risk of the cost and also have more government efficiency and less bureaucracy. Yes.
Do you believe it costs more to split it up between several state agencies than to have it under one agency that does farm it out?
Absolutely. It will cost more to have it under 3 separate state agencies than it would to put it under one. That's why I suggested, you know, a month ago now, look at what the other states are doing. Alabama, our sister state right next door, is only 6 months ahead of us on this. They passed a bill in the spring. They established an independent commission. I don't care if the legislature does an independent commission or just puts it under the health department, but Alabama said let's have one entity to do it. The different elected officials had appointments, and they're having their meetings right now to discuss how to do this. By the way, the legislature of Alabama gave them 18 months to come up with a program. And so they're having meetings, and I've been in talks with Alabama, and I have information to share about what Alabama's doing if anybody will listen to the humble Commissioner of Agriculture of the state of Mississippi. All right. One more. Yes, Ty.
So the majority of Mississippians voted for medical marijuana. So what do you have to say to those who are looking to you to help move forward medical marijuana in the state?
Yeah. Well, I think there's no doubt we're going to have a medical marijuana program in Mississippi. The voters voted for it. The legislature seems on board with passing it. So that's not the question of whether we're going to have one, but how it's going to be structured. And as I said, who's going to run it, who's going to pay for it, and how much is it going to cost. And I think that what I can do is what I'm doing right now, trying to find a way to make it the most efficient, the less burden, make it easier for the patients to have access, to have it all under the Department of Health. And really and truly, at the end of the day, this bill could be fixed very simply with some modest changes to make it look more like Initiative 65 than it does right now. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch. I'm looking forward. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to reach an agreement or something with the legislative leadership, and certainly we'll let you know. Thank you all. Have a great day.